Hey everyone, and welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today we're diving into Coeur Mining, ticker symbol CDE. They're a big player in the precious metals world, really focused on gold and silver, but also have some zinc and lead operations.
Yeah, a diversified portfolio, that can be a good thing in the sometimes unpredictable world of mining.
For sure, for sure. But here's the thing. Coeur Mining stock has been taking a hit, kind of a bit of a hit lately. It's down like 32% just in the last month, and that's a pretty steep drop. But their performance in 2024, at least on paper, seemed really strong. So we're going to try to figure out what's happening here. Is this a sign of trouble, or could it be, a potential buying opportunity for some smart investors out there?
It's a really interesting question and probably one a lot of investors are asking themselves right now. I think to really understand what's going on with Coeur Mining, we got to zoom out a little, look at the bigger picture first. Early 2025 has been, well, a bit of a roller coaster ride for the whole stock market, especially for those companies tied to precious metals.
Yeah, it really seems like gold and silver prices just can't make up their mind which way they want to go.
Exactly. And that volatility, those ups and downs, they're being influenced by a whole bunch of factors, things like inflation, interest rates, all that fun stuff. So even if a company like Coeur is performing well, operationally on the ground, its stock price can still get pushed around by these bigger forces.
So it's not always a direct reflection of how healthy the company itself is.
Yeah,
There's this whole other layer of market dynamics we have to think about.
that's exactly it. Now, to zero in on Coeur Mining specifically, as of today, March 4th, 2025, their stock is sitting at 4.959. That's a pretty significant drop from its February high of 7.30.
Ouch. Yeah, that's a big swing. No wonder investors are feeling a little nervous.
And to add to the uncertainty, there's been some chatter, on X predicting the price could drop even further. Some are saying it could go as low as 3.79, even down to 4.05.
Okay, so yeah, not exactly painting the rosiest picture, huh? But before we get too carried away, let's look at the details. Let's start with their Q4 2024 earnings report. There's some good news and, well, maybe some not so good news.
Lay it on me.
All right, so the good news first. Coeur had a record year. They brought in, get this, over $1 billion in revenue. That's huge. And that was driven by some pretty significant increases in production. Their silver production was up 34%, and gold production at their Rochester mine. That jumped by, wait for it, 63%. And on top of that, their free cash flow, it doubled in the second half of the year.
Wow, those are some impressive numbers. I mean, $1 billion in revenue, that's a huge milestone for any company.
Right. So on the surface, things seem pretty healthy, pretty darn good. And here's the but. They did miss their Q4 earnings per share, or EPS, and revenue estimates. And EPS, for anyone who's not familiar, it's basically how we measure a company's profitability. And when they miss those estimates, well, sometimes investors can get a little spooked.
Yeah, I get it. Investors, they often get really laser focused on those quarterly targets. Any little deviation, and it can trigger like a mini sell-off, right?
Exactly. But here's the catch. Their overall performance for the whole year was strong, really strong, and they actually beat expectations in the previous quarter, Q3. So this is what I don't get.
Wow.
Why is the stock down when the bigger picture seems pretty darn positive?
That's where it gets tricky, right? That's where the whole market psychology thing comes in. Sometimes, even when a company's doing well, other things can push the stock price down, sometimes in ways that don't seem to make sense.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, one thing is, and you hear this a lot, is profit taking. It happens after a stock has had a good run up. Some investors decide, hey, I'm going to cash out, take my gains, and run. And that can put downward pressure on the price, even if the company itself is doing fine.
So some people are selling just because the stock went up before and they want to lock in their profit. That seems kind of, I don't know, backward.
Yeah, it can feel that way. But remember, the stock market, it's not always rational. It's driven by emotions, fear, uncertainty, all that. And sometimes those emotions can overpower even the good news.
So even a company with solid performance, they can get caught up in a market downturn, just swept along with the tide.
Exactly. It's kind of like, being on a boat in choppy waters. The boat itself might be strong, but those waves can still toss it around.
Yeah, I see your point. Okay, so we've got some possible explanations for this dip, but it's still a bit of a head scratcher. Let's shift gears a little, move beyond just the earnings report. Let's talk about some of the moves Coeur's been making, strategically. In early 2025, they acquired SilverCrest Metals, and it was a pretty big deal, like $1.7 billion.
Yeah, that was a big one. By getting SilverCrest, they picked up the Las Chispas mine. It's a high-grade mine, and it really puts them in a position to become, a global leader in silver production. A bold move, for sure. Really trying to solidify their spot in the market.
But here's where it gets even weirder. Okay. The stock actually dropped, fell 11.6% right after they announced the acquisition. You'd think a big move like that would send the stock up, not down.
Right, you would. It does seem counterintuitive at first. But these big acquisitions, even when they make sense strategically, they often make investors nervous.
Okay, I'm listening. What kind of concerns are we talking about here?
Well, the biggest one is usually the cost of integrating a new mine, especially one as big as Las Chispas. It's not just plug and play. And then there's the whole issue of what they call stock dilution.
Stock dilution. Okay, that sounds kind of scary. What does that even mean?
Basically, when a company issues new shares to pay for something like an acquisition, it can make the existing shares worth a tiny bit less. Think of it like a cake. You cut it into 10 slices, right? If you suddenly cut it into 12 slices, each slice gets a little smaller.
Ah, okay. So the Coeur Mining cake is getting sliced into more pieces. So investors might be worried their piece is shrinking, even if the overall cake is getting bigger.
Exactly. It's a short-term concern, but it often causes a knee-jerk reaction in the market.
Okay, so we've got this acquisition, which might be a smart move in the long run, but it kind of freaked out investors in the short term. And then we've got these broader market jitters, just adding fuel to the fire, pushing everything down.
Yeah, it's like a perfect storm, a combination of things all happening at once.
But wait a minute, haven't there also been some positive signs, things that the market seems to be ignoring?
You're absolutely right. There have been. For example, Moody's, the credit rating agency, they upgraded Coeur's rating to B2 in February 2025.
So that's basically Moody saying, hey, Coeur's financial health is actually improving.
Yeah, exactly. A credit rating upgrade, that's a big deal. It means they see less risk, more stability, which should be good news for investors.
Okay, so that's a plus. Anything else?
There's also been, and this is always interesting, some insider buying.
Insider buying, you mean people who work at Coeur are buying their own stock?
Yep. Exactly. And one notable example is Coeur's CFO, Thomas Whelan. He bought 10,000 shares at 5.25 each back in February.
So even with the stock dipping, he's putting his money where his mouth is. That's got to be a good sign, right?
It does suggest some confidence, doesn't it? Insider buying, it often means that the folks who know the company best, they think the stock is undervalued, like it's on sale.
Man, this is getting more and more interesting. So on the one hand, we've got Coeur posting some solid numbers, making big moves, getting a credit upgrade, and their own people are buying up the stock. But on the other hand, we've got this pretty significant drop in the price. It's like the market is sending us mixed messages, speaking in two different languages.
You got it. That's a great way to put it. There's a real disconnect between how Coeur Mining is actually performing and how the market is valuing them right now.
Well, you've definitely piqued my interest. Let's see if we can unravel this mystery a little more in the next part of our look at Coeur Mining. So we've been laying out, kind of the story of Coeur Mining so far. Solid earnings in 2024. They did this major acquisition to, really boost their silver production, but still the stock's down. It's kind of a puzzle.
It is, yeah. The market, well, sometimes it just doesn't behave the way you'd expect.
Definitely keeps things interesting for us, for us folks trying to make sense of it all.
For sure. I think it's at times like these, when things are a little uncertain, that it's super important to really keep a long-term perspective.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, but what does that actually mean, practically speaking? How do you do that?
It means, don't get too caught up in the day-to-day or even the month-to-month swings of the market. Investing, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right?
So, resist that urge to panic and sell everything when things get a little shaky.
Exactly. Focus on the fundamentals of the company, the underlying business. Are they making money? Are they growing? Do they have a good management team? A solid plan for the future? That's what matters.
Makes sense. Okay, so back to Coeur Mining specifically. Is this dip, is this a trap, or is it a real opportunity, to buy low?
That's the question everyone wants to know, right? Well, if you look at the average price target that analysts have set for Coeur, it's 8.61.
Wow, that's a lot higher than it's trading at right now.
It is. We're talking about a potential 73% upside from where it is today.
Okay, so for someone like me, who's, not a Wall Street wizard, what am I supposed to take away from that?
It suggests that the market might be undervaluing Coeur Mining right now. Their fundamentals look good, but the stock price isn't reflecting that.
So that's a good sign, potentially, for people who are in it for the long haul.
Potentially, yes. But as with any investment, there are always risks.
What kind of risks?
Well, like we talked about earlier, one of the biggest things influencing core mining's performance is the price of precious metals, how much gold and silver are going for. And those markets, they can be volatile.
Right, so their fate is kind of tied to the price of those commodities.
Exactly. So if you're thinking about investing in core, you got to be okay with some ups and downs. It's not going to be a smooth ride.
Okay, so not a slam dunk, for sure. But it could have a big payoff if gold and silver prices, if they head in the right direction.
That's the trade-off, right? Higher risk, but also the potential for higher returns.
All right, so we've talked about the market and the acquisition. What else is Coeur doing? Like, what's their plan for growth, long term? How are they going to navigate all this?
Well, they're actually doing some really cool stuff in terms of like innovation. For example, they're starting to use AI, artificial intelligence, in their mining operations.
AI in mining. That sounds, I don't know, super futuristic.
It is pretty cutting edge. They're using AI to analyze like geological data to figure out the best places to drill, the most efficient ways to extract the metals. It makes them more efficient, more profitable, and potentially even, more environmentally friendly.
So it's not just digging holes in the ground anymore. There's like a whole tech layer to it now.
Right. And they're also looking at using blockchain technology, which is, you usually hear about that with cryptocurrencies, but they want to use it to create more transparent supply chains.
Wait, blockchain for mining. How does that even work?
So blockchain basically allows you to track a piece of gold or silver, like from the moment it's dug up all the way to the end customer. It's like a digital fingerprint for each piece of metal.
So it's about accountability, like knowing where stuff comes from.
Exactly. And that kind of transparency is becoming really important for a lot of consumers, people who care about, ethical sourcing, sustainability, all that.
It's like fair trade coffee, but for precious metals.
Perfect analogy. And it's a way for Coeur to, set themselves apart from the competition, appeal to investors who are looking for companies that are doing things the right way.
So they're innovating, they're embracing new technology, they're thinking about the future. Sounds like they're doing a lot of things right.
They are. But it's important to always remember that investing has risks. No one can see the future.
For sure. No guarantees in this game.
Right. That's why it's so important to do your research, understand the risks and the potential rewards, and make decisions that are right for you, for your goals, and how much risk you're comfortable with.
Great advice. Okay, so where does this leave us with Coeur Mining? What's the bottom line?
Well, they have a solid track record, they're making smart moves, and they're definitely forward-thinking. But they've also got some challenges, like the market volatility and some concerns about this big acquisition they just made.
It's a mixed bag, that's for sure.
The big question is, are these signs of, deeper problems, or is this just a temporary bump in the road for a company that has a bright future?
I guess that's up to each investor to decide.
Exactly. We've tried to give you the information, the tools to think about it. Now it's up to you to weigh the factors and decide what you think.
Okay, well, let's move on to the last part of our Coeur Mining analysis. We'll try to bring it all together, help everyone navigate this pretty complex investment world. All right, so we've spent this whole episode talking about Coeur Mining, a company with a lot of potential, but also facing like some real headwinds in this crazy market.
It has been a fascinating discussion. I mean, Coeur Mining is a perfect example of, how the stock market can be so exciting, but also so unpredictable.
Definitely keeps us on our toes, right?
You said it. It's never a dull moment, that's for sure.
Okay, so let's do a quick recap, kind of bring it all together. Coeur Mining, they're the leading producer of these precious metals with a pretty impressive history of growth and profits. And they've made some bold moves lately, like that big acquisition we talked about, and they're investing in some really cutting-edge technology.
Yeah, but they're also dealing with these external pressures, right? Like the volatility in the market, and there are still some concerns about how smoothly they can integrate that new mine they bought.
And of course, there's that elephant in the room, the stock price. It's taken a real hit these last few weeks.
Right. So that's the big question for investors. Is this a chance to buy low, or is it a sign that things are going to get worse?
Yeah, the million-dollar question, and I don't think there's an easy answer.
Nope, no crystal ball here. Investing always has some level of uncertainty, You just can't predict the future with 100% certainty.
But hey, at least we've tried to give everyone the info they need, to make a smart decision.
Absolutely. We've looked at the financials, their strategic moves, their growth potential. the whole market context.
So now it's up to each individual investor, right? They got to weigh those factors and decide if Coeur Mining fits with their goals and their risk tolerance.
Exactly. Investing, it's a personal thing. What's right for one person might be totally wrong for someone else.
So before anyone jumps in, do your homework right. Really dig into those financial statements, read the analyst reports, and really think about, your own philosophy as an investor.
Think of this as like, a starting point. We're giving you the framework, but ultimately the decision is yours.
And if anyone's interested in learning more, digging deeper into Coeur Mining, there's tons of info online.
Yeah, you can check out their website, look at financial news sites, or even talk to a professional financial advisor.
And as always, everyone, remember, investing involves risk. You know the drill. Never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Good reminder. It's easy to get caught up in the hype, but gotta stay level-headed, make those rational decisions.
Well, that about wraps up our discussion on Coeur Mining, a company with a lot going for it, but definitely facing some real challenges in the market.
It's going to be interesting to see how things play out for them, over the next few months, even the next few years.
Yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. Thanks for joining us today on Investing Talk Podcast.
It's been great, sharing our thoughts with everyone.
And to all our listeners out there, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit that subscribe button, share it with your friends, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about Coeur Mining. We love hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, happy investing.